violated, and the president has essentially set himself at war against the rule of law.
Just would add to that in saying that when we talk about the difference between a democracy and a dictatorship, one of the foundational principles of our Constitution is that of checks and balances, which means that co-equal branches of government have to respond to each other. And so with the president's blanket refusal to honor subpoenas, to allow witnesses to testify, he has taken this to a completely new phase. And I think as I watched Attorney General Barr's performance yesterday in the Senate, there were so many questions that continue to arise about whether the Attorney General is using his position to be the personal defense counsel for the president. My line of questioning today, had I had the opportunity, would have been around ongoing attempts at obstruction of justice. This is not just something that is in the past, but the president is continuing to tweet and say things that imply that if somebody refuses to tell the truth or speaks against him, that there will be consequences to pay. There are numerous things that we have a responsibility and an obligation to investigate and to oversee, and I think we are truly in a new phase of this entire situation that is deeply, deeply destructive to the Constitution and to the foundations of our democracy.
I think what the House Judiciary Committee and my colleagues and Chairman Nadler did today was to do something that the American people have not seen. Since the Watergate proceedings of Richard Nixon, they have not seen a president not stand up to the Congress, but stand up to the Constitution in a way that rejects all of its parameters and all of the dignity and the order that we have run this country. The Constitution started out by saying we wanted to form a more perfect union. Today, the Attorney General joined with his supervisor, the President of the United States, decided to show the American people that this is not a democracy, that in fact we do not adhere to the rule of law, and we will continue to be disrespectful to the people's house. I think my line of questioning, as my colleagues have indicated, would be just the truth. As the March 27th Mueller letter stated to the Attorney General that he wanted the documents to be released. They were not released. And so here we stand today with no other option other than to hold the Attorney General in contempt, which we hope that will happen. We have not done that because we wanted to continue negotiations. So I would simply ask the question, is this the way we want to run this nation? Do we want a president that does not welcome the truth and subjecting those who work for him to be tested on the truth? Do we not understand the Constitution and Article 1 and Article 2? This Judiciary Committee will not be targeting anyone. All we'll be doing is doing our job, and that is to have members of the Cabinet of the President of the United States to come before this committee and tell the truth. We will not stop until we get the truth, until the truth is told to the American people, and the American people will decide as we go forward that the truth has to be acted on. And that's what I think some of our Republican friends are afraid of.
Attorney General Bill Barr is now one of the most dangerous men in Washington, D.C. for 3 reasons. First, he intentionally mischaracterized the Mueller report. He was then told by Robert Mueller that he mischaracterized the Mueller report, and instead of apologizing, he doubles down and continues to mislead the American people. Second, today he ignored the will of Congress, oversight responsibilities of Congress, and lawfully issued subpoenas. And third, right now he is suing to eliminate your health care coverage. Let's not forget, right now he is suing in court to eliminate pre-existing conditions health care coverage and taking health care coverage away from millions of Americans. We in Congress will rein him in. We will hold him accountable.
As a first-time member of Congress, I can't imagine any place else I would rather be right now. I mean, as a student of American history, as a supporter of our Constitution, this is just such a grave moment, and I hope everyone is understanding how grave it is, particularly those at the White House. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. You know, I just have to say, as a former police chief, that it was painful and disgraceful to see the nation's top cop abandon his responsibilities to allow an empty chair to speak for him this morning. However, as a committee member, we were respectful enough to put the Honorable William P. Barr, to put honorable on his name tag, if you will, this morning. However, but if you look at what the Attorney General has done since he has been in office, he certainly worked harder to protect someone who does not deserve to be protected. There's not much that the Attorney General has done as the nation's top cop that we can consider honorable. And so this morning was a dark day, a dark morning for the United States of America and all that the Department of Justice should mean to this nation. So, thank you.
In the 2016 elections, this nation was attacked from outside of its borders by the Russians. As a result of their outside attack, we are now being attacked from the inside by the very Trump administration whom the Russians favored. This is a very dark day and a very dark time for our republic. It is under attack. The worst kind of damage that can be done to America is from its enemies from within. And we have enemies and we have aiders and abettors of those enemies. I'm afraid that we have reached a time when the people of this great nation must stand up and demand that Congress take appropriate action to stop this attack on our republic and save this nation, its democracy, and all of the ideals of liberty, fairness, and justice that we all hold dear. Thank you.
I've been a student of government all my life. I watched the Watergate hearings from the beginning to the end. This smacks so much of Watergate. An Attorney General like John Mitchell, who believes the president is above the law. That is not America. The president is not above the law, and if the president thinks that the special counsel's investigation is a witch hunt, he cannot stop it. But our Attorney General thinks so. Chicken Barr should have shown up today and answered questions. He was afraid of Barry Burke. He was afraid of Norm Eisen. An Attorney General who is picked for his legal acumen and his abilities would not be fearful of any other attorneys questioning him for 30 minutes. This man was picked to be Roy Cohn and to be Donald Trump's fixer. The Black Sox look clean compared to this team. It's a sad day in America.
Good morning. I did not have the privilege of being born into this country. I became an American citizen when I was 20 years old, and I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all foreign and domestic enemies. Attorney General Barr took the same oath, and today he shows that the only oath that he is now following is to protect and defend the president, who right now is threatening the strength of our democracy. Having come from Latin America, I understand very well what it means when a man in power starts circumventing equal branches of government. We must not allow this to happen in the United States of America. Thank you.
Good morning. The Attorney General has a constitutional responsibility to uphold the rule of law. Instead, he's done everything to undermine the rule of law. The so-called Attorney General is abrasive, evasive, and unpersuasive. He is a disgrace to the office that he currently holds. The so-called Attorney General is missing in action, absent without official leave, and has clearly made the decision to serve as the personal fixer for Donald Trump, inconsistent with the oath of office that he has taken. And we as House Democrats recognize that we are a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for the American people. We have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. Donald Trump, the so-called Attorney General, and his minions are out of control right now. We won't overreach, we won't over-politicize, we won't over-investigate, but we will do our constitutional oversight responsibility. The so-called Attorney General can run, but he cannot hide.
Today, Attorney General Barr and this administration have done a great disservice to the American people. It's not only about the Mueller report, but this is about protecting the integrity of our national security. This is about protecting the integrity of our elections. This is about protecting the integrity of people in this country being able to have affordable health care. They have done a great disservice to the American people. And we, Congress, have the responsibility as a co-equal branch of government to protect and to serve, and to make sure the American people have the facts and the information that they need to make sure that they know that government is truly working on their behalf. And my colleagues and I will continue to stand, to fight for the truth, continue to stand for what is right, to make sure that democracy works for each and every individual in this country. Today, we will still continue to stand to wait for the truth because you deserve it.
How will you put some teeth behind your enforcement demands given this unprecedented level of what used to be White House defiance?
Well, I think oh, sure. I mean, I think the members, I think we all believe very strongly that the next step is to begin proceedings to hold the Attorney General in contempt for the failure to comply with the subpoena yesterday. I think we are all pressing our chairman to do that. He's, as he has been, attempting to negotiate in good faith to see if the Attorney General will do it voluntarily. But in the absence of an agreement there, it is our position that the Attorney General is in contempt of Congress, that we have a responsibility to compel his compliance with a lawfully issued subpoena, because as I said earlier, if the executive branch can willfully violate lawfully issued subpoenas, they will have successfully eliminated congressional oversight. It cannot be up to the executive branch to decide what witnesses and what evidence we will collect in our constitutionally mandated oversight responsibility. So the next step will be an effort to begin proceedings to hold the Attorney General in contempt if, in fact, this negotiation or conversation doesn't result in an agreement. I think we all feel.
I think that a contempt proceeding would take quite a long time. It's going to be drawn out in court. By your insistence on this format, haven't you essentially blown the opportunity to question the Attorney General here in a public setting?
No, but I think Perrell's going to
Well, at this point, I think there's also a question of what the Attorney General is going to continue to say and do. He did not show in the Senate hearings yesterday that he was going to answer some of the very difficult questions. In fact, he made it clear on several occasions that he thought that it was fine for the president to lie, for the president to say things to people and encourage them to not tell the truth. So at this point, another step that we will be taking and that the chairman has already put into place is we want Robert Mueller to come and testify before us. At this point, I think we need to hear directly from the special counsel about his report and about his findings. Clearly, he felt troubled enough by what Attorney General Barr did and said that he wrote not one but 2 letters to the Attorney General. He even prepared summaries of his 2 volumes that could be released immediately to the American people. And yet we did not see that happen. It was almost 32 days, I think, from the time that he delivered his report to yesterday when we learned that he had these summaries prepared and ready to go to the public. So at this point, I think in addition to holding the Attorney General in contempt should these negotiations not work out, we need to have Robert Mueller. At this point, I don't feel that I can trust anything that the Attorney General is saying because I don't know who the Attorney General works for. He certainly is not working for the American people.
Well, first of all, the one thing I'd like to say is Democrats are not rushing toward impeachment, but neither are we afraid of it. The format that we're using is a format to be able to educate the Congress and the American people about how much untruth has been said. These are dangerous times because if we set the precedent as General Barr has done, who is next not to respond to the Congress? What cabinet officer in the midst of a crisis? Is it the acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary in the midst of a crisis? Is it the Health and Human Services? So one of the things that we will continue to do is use possibly the contempt proceeding, as our chairman may decide to do. In addition, we will not take off an ultimate act that we are allowed to do under the Constitution. But let me show you the example. When the tapes were found with Richard Nixon, the American people said enough is enough. I can assure you, as we build the blocks of finding out the truth, there is still that proceeding, but we will not be baited into it as our friends in the committee choose to try and do. We will only do it as this Constitution gives us the power to do. So we're not intimidated by the fact that it may be a little longer. The idea of the attorneys, as many have seen, is the continuity of questioning. That means that you can cross-examine in the midst of your time frame. Collectively, the excellent members of Congress that are on this committee, I have been stunned and excited by their questioning and their thoughts. We will put all that together. But what happens when the lawyers, and I have been on impeachment proceedings in this committee, judges and others, is the line of reasoning that allows even the American people to see the building blocks and the story narrative of truth that is so very important. Well, I will just say this. Our committee chairman is very patient, but he's very knowledgeable, and he understands the time frame. Let me say this. Let's hope that there is something productive over the weekend. Let's hope that the General of the United States understands his duty, and as my colleagues have said, will pay and affirm allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and not a single man who is fleeting in that job. So we're hoping that General Barr's own credibility and love of his country over the weekend will generate a resolution of this.
But to your previous... Can I just add one specific thing? It's also important to recognize the House rules permit this kind of questioning. We approved it in a motion before the committee. It's done. It has been done many other times, most recently with Dr. Blasey Ford. So the real question is not why do we want to collect evidence in this way. The real question is to the Attorney General. What are you afraid of? Why don't you want to be questioned in a half-hour period by a staff attorney? That's the real question for the American people and for the media, frankly.
But to your previous point, are you concerned that this is now going to get to your previous point, are you concerned that this is now just going to get bogged down in court? And are you all okay with the fact that it may now take longer for you to get all of these answers that you're demanding?
Right. So let's just walk through the process of how contempt proceedings work. So Attorney General Bill Barr has violated a lawful subpoena to provide us the full Mueller report and its underlying evidence. If we go to contempt, the House Judiciary Committee will vote. If we vote it out, it goes to the House floor. Once the House floor votes it out, then it triggers a number of things. Our House counsel can go litigate in court, but we also have inherent contempt powers that courts have upheld for us to take immediate action irrespective of the courts. We can start imposing fines on that person. In the past, they had a House jail. I don't think we're going to go that far, but courts have upheld that as well. So Congress's power will not be abdicated. We will enforce it And the delay will not affect us because we can start imposing fines on that person immediately upon contempt off the House floor. And we will go there if he does not cooperate.
But that's still a very long time before you get any of the answers that you were hoping to get here today.
That's just a matter of weeks to get something off the House floor.
He fallen.
What would it take to move to impeach Bill Barr? Is that something that's on the table? And what would it take for you to take that drastic step, do you think?
Well, with respect to the Attorney General's behavior, nothing's on the table or off the table. We're evaluating things in a step-by-step basis. And the next step, as has been illustrated, will be to possibly pursue contempt. And Congress has control over that timeline. But understand the stakes. What we are witnessing is the slow loss of our democratic republic. And we can either allow it to happen or we can stand up against it. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they're behaving like a cover-up caucus for this president, a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump administration. That is not what the founding fathers envisioned. And so we are not going to allow the notion of a presidential dictatorship to take hold. This is a democracy. We're a separate and co-equal branch of government, and we are going to uphold that principle by any means necessary.
He volunteered to come in today. Is this jumping way too far ahead? And then second, Congresswoman, you had talked about how staff questioning goes during an impeachment hearing. So are you equating this, what you wanted to happen today, to an impeachment hearing?
No, I think my colleague just indicated that this process was used during the Kavanaugh hearings. And what we're saying is that this is that's the point. That's the point that we're making. That this is allowable under House rules. The Congress, as the Senate, the House, and the Senate can discern and decide their own rules and the best approach to draw evidence or information so that we can make the appropriate decision. Let me also say we're writing legislation regarding what happened in Volume 1 and Volume 2. How incredulous is it, of all of the contacts with Russians, that there was no legal basis other than collusion or conspiracy? Why wasn't there interacting with Russian operatives, enemies of the American people, and that would be a criminal act, which we're introducing legislation on that or have already done so. But what I would say to you is we're only following the rules, and the rules are that we're allowed to do this. And I guess I asked the question of the General of the United States, as has been said, very aptly. And my heart really breaks on this. If any of us, or lawyers or non-lawyers, it really breaks. I asked him, would he not, in his view of his own reputation and his view of being the chief legal officer, has been said, for the people of the United States, would he, should I say that, would he please adhere to the rule of law and appear before this committee? But I do want to conclude by saying we're moving on other witnesses because our task is to find out the truth.
Why didn't you take the Justice Department's, the opportunity they provided to you to go and see a lesser redacted copy of the report? My understanding is only Republicans have done that, but Democrats refused to do so.
We didn't have that opportunity, actually.
Well, that
Chairman
opportunity
Nadler,
was not
Chairman
given to
Nadler
us.
had that opportunity.
Let's refocus on what's at stake here, okay? 6 weeks after the special counsel submitted his report, the Congress of the United States still doesn't have it. This is completely unprecedented. In every other case of a special counsel or an independent counsel report, Congress got it within a couple of days, completely unredacted. The redactions are up to us. And Special Counsel Mueller gave the redactions directly to Attorney General Barr. That's what we've learned in the last couple of days from the correspondence which was leaked through the media. That was the only reason we found out about it. It was very clear that the report could have been released within a couple of days. But instead, Attorney General Barr wanted to pull a propaganda smokescreen over the entire country. And we are still laboring to unearth the real report, to get it unredacted so we can read it. That is our constitutional power. And my colleagues keep saying we are a co-equal branch of government. We are at least a co-equal branch of government. We are Article 1 before Article 2. We are the lawmaking power of the American people. We are the direct representatives of the American people, and the president's job is just to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, not to make sure that the laws are thwarted and frustrated and violated. And yet the entire administration is now in a full-blown cover-up mode to try to hide the contents of Special Counsel Mueller's report. And all that Attorney General Barr did was to try to tell a false story to the American people about what was in there, and they continue to scramble to throw out more and more propaganda to cover up what's really in there. We are going to get to the bottom of this. We are going to have the real facts come out to the American people. We are going to allow the American people to hear directly from the witnesses, including Special Counsel Mueller, including Don McGahn, the White House counsel, about what the president did to obstruct justice. Because if we allow a president to obstruct justice and to convert the government of the United States into a money-making vehicle for himself and his family and his business, then that will set a precedent that generations to come will regret and lament. We've got a constitutional responsibility here, and we're going to fulfill it.
I just want to say one thing about Director Mueller. I was here when he was director of the FBI, and I was offended by his character and integrity being sullied yesterday in the Senate Judiciary hearing. I want to thank Director Mueller for his work and his team's work. I don't know what he's going to say before our committee. I cannot give a prognosis on what he will say. But I do believe the American people owe him a debt of gratitude. And I also know that it has been reported by people who know him. They've said he has never sent a letter, maybe once, a letter of this kind in his career. He wants to be known as an ex-Marine who serves his nation. And so I would just suggest to all of us that if he wrote such a letter on March 27th when he said, in essence, I told you to give everything to the Congress and the American people, it must have been a heavy burden on him that the General of the United States, the Attorney General, was not representing him, his team, or the people of the United States, that in fact he turned out to be the personal lawyer of a person who is fleeting in an office that belongs to the people of the United States, and that's the presidency. And I can only say that as he comes before our committee, none of us can dictate what he will say, but I do believe that he will tell the truth in the best way he possibly can. And I want to say to Director Mueller, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
If good faith negotiations don't result in a pledge of compliance in the next day or two, the next step is seeking a contempt citation against the Attorney General. The committee will convene at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning as planned. My colleagues will be present. I hope and expect that the Attorney General will think overnight and will be there as well. The failure of Attorney General Barr to come to the hearing today is simply another step in the administration's growing attack on American democracy and its attack on the right of Congress to be a coordinate branch of government and to have the information it needs to legislate and act on behalf of the American people. The administration, by its policy of across-the-board defiance of congressional subpoenas and is saying that only the executive matters, that we don't want limitations by Congress that the Constitution imposes on us. This is a grave danger for American democracy, and we must do all we can in the name of the American people to ensure that when the Trump administration ends, we have as robust a democracy to hand to our children as was handed to us. And today is a day of testing, and everyone will be judged by history in terms of how they react to this.
Mr. Chairman, how concerned are you that this is all just going to get bogged down in the courts, and that because of your insistence on letting staff attorneys do some questioning, that it will now take even longer for you to get the answers that you've been demanding?
We are going to use what process we have in the courts and elsewhere to get the answers and the information we need. In particular, the subpoena for the entire unredacted Mueller report and the underlying documents was due yesterday. The Attorney General, we got a letter late last night refusing to adhere to the subpoena. This is indefensible, and it is part of the attack on American democracy by this administration. We will make one more good faith attempt to negotiate and to get the access to the report that we need, and then if we don't get that, we will proceed to hold the Attorney General in contempt, and we'll go from there.
Why not negotiate a bit of...
I mean, how long are you going to give the Attorney General to answer your questions and to negotiate in good faith before you hold him in contempt?
A day or two.
Mr. Chairman,
So this by the end of the week you want this resolved?
Maybe by Monday, we'll see.
Mr. Chairman, why not negotiate a middle ground about the format of today's hearing? And haven't you, in a sense, made it harder to get the answers that you've been asking for?
We cannot concede to the administration the ability to control the manner in which Congress does its job. The Attorney General is bound, as are other witnesses, to come before the committee, and he cannot dictate to us how we will do our job. We feel this is the most effective way of doing it, and that's our decision.
Would you insist on staff
And-
attorneys for the Mueller interview?
Using fines as part of the
Say
inherent.
again?
Your colleague, before you came out, brought up the idea of maybe imposing fines under inherent contempt as a way to try to get him to comply. Is that something that's on the table? How would that work? That's not something we see every day.
We will explore all the options, and inherent contempt is certainly one of the options.
How do you respond to the DOJ saying that you're a lawyer? Why can't you question Attorney General Barr yourself?
The administration, the Attorney General apparently is afraid of proper cross-examination. We ask questions under the 5-minute rule, and we've seen a pattern from this administration. The administration witnesses filibuster for 4.5 minutes, and then give a non-responsive answer for the next half a minute, and then it's on to a different questioner who may have other questions in mind or may not properly follow up the way a good cross-examiner would. So we feel the best way of doing this is to have all our members ask their 5 minutes of questions each, and have counsel be able to bat cleanup, so to speak, at the end, follow loose ends, and be able to hold the witness, the Attorney General in this case, to ask follow-up questions so that he can't evade as easily as he can. And obviously, the Attorney General is afraid to face that kind of questioning. I mean, what we saw today is, besides the attitude of contempt the administration has for Congress, what we saw is fear. Fear of effective cross-examination, period.
Does this mean anything for impeachment of the president?